Hi, this is Wendy Lightheart, and today we're going to learn how to multiply polynomials. So first we'll look at how to multiply monomials together. To multiply monomials with the same variable base, we multiply the coefficients and then we multiply the variables. We use the product rule for exponents to multiply the variables together, which remember says to keep the variable and add the exponents. So here's an example of a monomial times a monomial. Notice that 3x squared is just a single term, so that would make that a monomial, and the same thing for 5x to the 7th. So to multiply a monomial times a monomial, we multiply the coefficients, which would be 3 times 5, and then we multiply the variables, which is the x squared times the x to the 7th. This is really just an application of the commutative and associative laws for multiplication. Since this is just a series of multiplication, we can reorder and regroup how we would like. So when we multiply the 3 times the 5, we get 15. And when we multiply x squared times x to the 7th, we need to apply the product rule, which says to add the exponents. And of course, we always simplify as much as possible, so the 2 plus 7 becomes 9, and our answer is 15x to the 9th. So now we're going to look at how to multiply a monomial times a polynomial that's not a monomial. To multiply a monomial and a polynomial, we use the distributive property to multiply each term of the polynomial by the monomial. So here's an example where 3x is the monomial and 2x squared minus 5x plus 7 is the polynomial. It's not a monomial because it has 3 terms. So to multiply a monomial times a polynomial, we're basically just distributing the monomial through the parentheses. So for this one, we'll multiply 3x times 2x squared. Then we'll multiply 3x times negative 5x, so that's going to give us a negative answer, so we put a subtraction sign in front of that product. And then we multiply 3x times 7. Now we need to simplify each of these terms, so notice that we really have a monomial times a monomial for 3x times 2x squared, so we need to go back to what we just learned and multiply the coefficients together, so that's 3 times 2. And then multiply the x times the x squared. And so remember, we need to add the exponents when we do that multiplication, so the exponents are 1 and 2, so that's why we have a 1 plus 2 up here. Then going on to the next term, we have 3x times 5x, so we multiply the coefficients, 3 and 5. And then we multiply the x's together, and the exponents on both of those are 1s, so we're going to add 1 plus 1 to get the exponent on that x. Then for the last term, we multiply the coefficients of 3 and 7 together, and then we have just a single x left over. Now we need to simplify each of these terms, so the 3 times 2 becomes 6, and the 1 plus 2 in the exponent on that term becomes a 3. So we have 6x cubed for our first term. And then we have the minus sign, and then 3 times 5 is 15. And 1 plus 1 is 2, so we get x squared for the variable part of that term. And then we have a plus sign followed by 3 times 7 is 21, and then we just have an x on that. And notice that this is simplified as much as possible, so we're done. So now let's look at how do we multiply polynomials when neither one of them is a monomial. The way we do this is that we're going to multiply the second polynomial by each term of the first polynomial using the distributive property. Then of course we simplify. So here's an example of a binomial times a binomial. So we can multiply these by multiplying the second binomial, which is 2x minus 7, by each term of the first binomial. So we're going to multiply the first term of 3x plus 2 times the 2x minus 7. And then we'll multiply the plus 2 times the 2x minus 7. So 3x times 2x will be our first multiplication, and then 3x times 7, and it's actually 3x times negative 7, which will give us a negative answer, so we'll put a minus sign in front of the second term. Then we're multiplying a positive 2 times 2x, which will give us a positive term, and then a positive 2 times negative 7, which will give us a negative answer, so we'll put a minus sign in front of that term. So we simplify each of these terms by multiplying the coefficients together. So we have 3 times 2 gives us 6 for the first coefficient, and then x times x will be x squared, because remember we're adding 1 plus 1, which are the exponents, to get 2. Then we have minus 3 times 7, the coefficients gives us 21, and just a single x there, plus 2 times 2 is 4, and a single x on that term as well, and then minus 2 times 7 is 14. Now notice for this one we do have some like terms we can combine. So we finish simplifying by combining those like terms, and negative 21x plus 4x is negative 17x. So this gives us our final answer of 6x squared minus 17x minus 14. Now let's look at one that's a little bit more challenging. This one we have a binomial times a trinomial. So since neither one of these are monomials, what we need to do is multiply the second polynomial, which is the trinomial, by each term of the first polynomial, which is a binomial. So we're going to multiply x times the 2x squared plus 5x minus 8. So we're going to distribute that x through. So our first term we get from multiplying x times 2x squared. Then we have x times positive 5x, which will give us a positive answer, so we put a plus sign next, and then x times 5x. Then we multiply x times negative 8, that will give us a negative answer, so we put a minus sign next, and then we have x times 8. And now we're done distributing the x through the second polynomial, so now we need to distribute the negative 3 through the second polynomial. And note, it's very important to remember to take that negative sign with it when you distribute that 3. So we have negative 3 times 2x squared, which will give us a negative answer, so we'll put a minus sign next. And then negative 3 times 5x, which will also give us a negative answer, so we'll put a minus sign in front of that multiplication. And then lastly, we have negative 3 times negative 8, and remember that a negative times a negative is a positive, so we'll put a plus sign in front of that 3 times 8 multiplication. So now we need to simplify each of these terms. So we have x times 2x squared, so there's only one coefficient there, so we'll have a 2. And then x times x squared would be x to the third, since 1 plus 2 is 3. That's adding those exponents again. Then we have plus x times 5x would be 5x squared, because remember the exponents are 1 and 1, and when we add those together we get 2 for the exponent. Then we have minus 8x, and then minus 3 times 2 is 6, and then x squared doesn't have any other x's to multiply by, so it's going to stay the same. Then we have minus 3 times 5 is 15, and then we have that x that's there, and then lastly we have 3 times 8 is positive 24. And notice we have we need to combine like terms for this one as well. So if we combine the 5x squared and the negative 6x squared, we get a negative x squared. And the negative 8x and the negative 15x gives us the negative 23x. And that's as far as we can go. So our answer for this one is 2x cubed minus x squared minus 23x plus 24. And that's it for today.